This is Illiterate. Welcome, welcome. My name is Evan.
My name is Taylor. I read a book.
I didn't do anything this
Evan
week.
moved. No, you moved.
I moved.
What are we talking
And that's
about?
what we're talking about today. Today, we are covering This Is Where You Belong. There are two different tagline titles. What's yours?
The Art and Science of Loving Where You Live.
And this one I see here is Finding Home Wherever You Are. This is by Melody Warnick.
Let's get into it.
Melody Warnick was a freelance journalist for more than a decade, written for Reader's Digest, O, The Oprah Magazine, Redbook, Better Homes and Gardens, Ladies' Home Journal, Woman's Day, Parents, and the Atlantic City Lab. An accomplished journalist, to say the least. But this is her only book, right?
To my knowledge, yeah.
Fantastic.
Came out in 2017, is that correct?
I see 2016, originally published in 2016, but yeah. Pretty recent.
Yeah. So it's about moving. And Evan just moved.
I just moved. Me and my girlfriend Emily just moved into a nice little 1-bedroom loft apartment. So we have in
a new neighborhood.
These kinds of things are a new neighborhood. This is all on our mind. We're trying to find the place where we're more comfortable. We're trying to understand more about ourselves and about the places where we lived and how that is a give and take. So this is all very prevalent.
And there's a statistic at the end of this book that says more than 40% of moves happen between May and August.
Oh, wow.
So a lot of people, if you're planning on moving, you're probably moving in the next couple months. And
Well,
so
they got us.
here we go. Loving Where You Live. I'll just go through some statistics that she throws out at the beginning and the premise of the book, which is she moved and she's trying to figure out as a journalist, as one does, what's this all about? She was a serial
Well, it's a pretty
mover.
scary place to be.
Yeah.
I mean, we've all moved, but just all that anxiety of like, will I like it? Will it be what I, will I be comfortable? Will I? Where will I find what I need?
So when she's writing this book, this is her 6th move. She was moving from Austin, Texas to Blacksburg, Virginia,
Okay.
which is where Virginia Tech is. She's 36 at the time. She's got 2 kids in elementary school. The average stay of her life of where she's moved, she grew up in California, but now the average stay of where she's been is about 3.2 years in a place. And so she's like, are we going to settle down? This is for her husband's work. He's going to be a teacher there.
Okay.
So she's like thinking, well, when I grew up, I always lived in the same house as a kid. Like, I don't know if I should be moving and having my kids. They've already been at 3 different elementary schools, and is this the way to do it? And what am I chasing? What do I think is going to be? Because I just lived in the big city, and then now I'm moving to a smaller town of 40,000 people, Blacksburg, Virginia, and then before that I was in Iowa, and then before that I was in Maryland, or what have you. So
and what's going on?
Yeah.
here?
So what
and
am I
what is
looking
this
for?
doing, and why? And yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So she says that the average American moves 11 times before they die. Seems like a lot,
That does seem like a lot.
but it makes sense.
If I'm thinking about doing what we just did 11 times.
Well, you also moved from your hometown and then to somewhere else in
Oh,
college,
God.
and then from another place,
Yeah.
So you've already moved 5 times,
Oh my God.
right?
No, I'm half dead.
I only got 5 more moves.
I
the
can't
question-
move anymore. I've only got 5 more moves for the rest of my life. I've got to spare these out.
It's like a chess game. She talks about the healing power of geography, kind of as a joke. But it's true. You think about it. So
Oh, definitely.
Gretchen Rubin, who we already talked about,
Oh, Gretchen.
had a study, and she was saying that in this study where people are talking about big changes in career or relationship, or they felt like they really turned a corner, almost 40% of those changes were associated with a move to a new place in the study, because it does upend a lot of stuff. And you're like, oh, now I'll start taking yoga classes.
Yeah.
Now I'll really be a better parent. Now I'll, make a lot of friends, whatever it might be.
It forces you. It forces you in a lot of ways. It forces you to break out of a cycle. I mean, you can't do that any better than not being physically in the same place anymore.
Yeah, it definitely affects you. She was saying that's what she loved, is the thrill of possibility. So a couple more statistics. I'll be dipping in and out of statistics.
This is
here
that
just
number
for
of the
fun.
game, y'all.
She said that 12% of the U.S. moves a year, which makes sense.
Okay.
But if you put it in a visual context, it's as if every resident of the 25 largest cities, so I don't think the full metro areas, but the city proper, so like Los Angeles, New York, San Francisco, Boston, the 25 largest cities, if everybody in those cities just picked up and played musical chairs, that's 12% of the U.S. population.
Oh, wow.
Which is a lot.
Yeah.
So like China, Germany, only 5% of them have moved in the past 5 years.
Are Americans unhappy?
I don't know. In the U.S., in a 5-year span, it's 35% of the U.S. that moves. So she references another book, which I didn't look into, but I have read before, called The Geography of Bliss, where it's more of a travel journal, but this guy does from a global perspective. So if you're interested in that, I'll put a link to it in the show notes.
That's cool.
But it's called The Geography of Bliss, One Grump's Guide to Happiness in the World, or something like
Maybe
that.
We'll do that in a year or something. I don't know.
Yeah. So he's checking out all these different countries. He's talking to people, doing different research, citing different studies. But it's about how like Bhutan is the happiest place in the world, and why Brazil and what the cultural norms of different things change.
Well, that's fascinating.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Geography.
Put that on the list.
She's still confused about what this all means. And then she, like you said, she's a journalist. She's written for all these different things. She had followed this story in West Virginia about a flood that happened, and she was interviewing people there, and that's what changed her mind and got her on this project to write this book. She met this lady named Gertie in Laredo, West Virginia,
Gertie.
which had the deadliest flood in U.S. history, and she had lived there all her life, this lady, and she was taking her through the back roads and the different houses that she lived in, and she knew everybody, and she thought, why is this woman staying here and it's not a great place.
Yeah.
She was talking about how place affects things that you don't even necessarily think about. So like life expectancy. This was for life expectancy of men. Fairfax, Virginia has the highest life expectancy in the US for men. It's 81 is the average. But then just a couple hundred miles away in McDowell, West Virginia, it's 64.
Oh, wow.
So just even that is something. It's like, so, okay, you're in this sort of area. Why would you choose to stay?
That's interesting.
She got widowed. This Gertie lady got widowed at 35 with 5 kids.
Oh, my gosh.
But she's the main woman out there. And so the question is, what makes somebody, the 3 terms she uses is mobile, stuck, and rooted. So mobile is the people that move 45 times like her.
Mm-hmm.
Stuck is like, this crummy town, I want to get out of here, but you can't. And then rooted is Gertie could have left, but she chose to stay. Mm-hmm. And so then her question is, what if a place becomes our right place only by choosing to love it?
Right.
As a concept.
Yeah.
So I'm going to throw out another statistic for the U.S., which we talked about how so many people move, right? Mm-hmm. But also so many people stay. So 57% of the United States has never left their home state in moving. And then 37% has never even left their hometown in moving.
Wow.
So we said how 35% of the population will move, but also 37% will never leave their hometown.
Wow.
So it's a pretty sharp divide.
Oh my God.
In the country of who moves and who stays.
Well, even if you move, you could move in your hometown.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. So the term that she's using is place attachment, which we're going to refer to a lot. Yeah. But it's like, it's good to be home. You feel a sense of community. You don't want to leave. You feel an identity and an attachment to it. You feel a longing to it when you're not there.
Right.
All of that stuff. And according to these studies, it takes about 3 to 5 years. That's the peak season for place attachment. But now she's just moved to this Blacksburg, Virginia. And she's like, I don't want to spend 3 to 5, how can I, it seems like a fast food way of getting it, but is there a way that I can...
Can I make it feel like home now?
Yeah. Or what can I do
Is there
to
add
get
water?
Yeah. And so emotion and belief combined with action is the process. But if you acted like you loved your town, what would you do? And maybe that would help, kind of putting the cart before the horse.
Yeah.
If I was somebody that loved Blacksburg, how would I
What
act?
would I do? If I was a Blacksburgian that ate it,
Yeah.
lived it, walked it every day, what would you do?
And so the rest of the book then she's talking about is studies and different things that happen, and then her own experiments.
Just imagine her like living the life of like some old like grandpa who's like really well known in the town. Like she just like starts her day at the barber shop and that's next door to the diner, and she just pretends to be an old man. You could make it home in a weird way.
you could be a totally different person. So here's what she says. She says she purposely did it so that it's not big things, because there are big things that you could do to feel place attached, but she can't do. So like she can't buy a house.
Right.
She's renting.
Yeah.
She can't become the mayor. She can't open a community center. Like those things would make you really place attached.
Yeah.
She cannot do those. But so it's going to be 10 things with experiments.
But in 3 to 5 years, she could run for mayor.
Right.
And then she could really be,
Yeah.
right as that time window's opening up, man, that's when she could really, there we
Place
go.
attached. No, but it's some small actions that maybe you could replicate if you're moving, or you're just like, I'm in a place and I don't feel like this is home. If I was somebody that loved being here, what would I do? And so part 1, lace up your sneakers.
I'm wearing sandals, excuse you.
Slip on your sandals. Walking and biking is a big part of feeling place attached. 60% of home buyers now want walkable and bikeable neighborhoods.
Yeah.
According to a study.
That was a big one for us, man. We love being able to walk.
Mm-hmm.
We have a park out front of our new complex, so
Yeah.
that has offered a lot of nice walking opportunities.
Yeah. So she says she tried to look at the street view before on Google Maps of Blacksburg, and which everybody I recommend doing. There's a website called Walk Score. I don't know if you looked at
Oh
that
yeah,
when
I've heard
you
of
were
this.
moving.
Yeah.
So
I don't know if we looked at it here. That'd be interesting.
yeah. So I looked it up for you.
Oh, Taylor!
So here we're gonna go. So her score.
I threw my iPad out of my hands.
I saw Evan getting ready to look it up. No. I've already done it. I've done the research.
Lay it on me, Taylor.
So, well, I'll just get into her thing. So the walk score, for those that don't know, is a combination of, I don't know what maybe it's a mile radius, or whatever you could walk, a 1.5 mile radius around your specific address. And it's like how many schools there are, how many restaurants there are, how many bars there are, how many libraries, hospitals, all that stuff, and what you could reasonably walk to in that region. So an average kind of score for a location is 60, 65.
Okay.
That's an average number, which is like fine.
Yeah.
Her score in Blacksburg was 55 because it's in the foothills of the Blue Ridge Mountains of Virginia. Yeah. So she was like, well, I'm still going to figure out how to do it. So your walkability scores. Evan used to live in North Hollywood. I looked up his specific address. It was 85, which is pretty good. Where you are right now is 80 in Burbank. And then I looked up mine. I live in downtown, 98.
Look at you. Totally walkable.
Extreme access to, and I hardly use my car.
Right.
So she was saying about cars and driving and commuting. This was fascinating to me. Biologically, there was a study where they used electrodes and things measuring people's heart rates and their cortisol stress level hormone and everything. And for commuting and for things like going on a busy train and being in traffic for an hour, stuff like that, riot police are less freaked out in those levels of heart rate and cortisol than if you're in rush hour traffic.
That's fascinating.
Yeah. And so if you have to do that every day for an hour, you're like a riot policeman.
Oh man.
In your stress levels.
Oh God.
So that's why walking and biking is so important in general, but then also feeling like you're connected to it. So the thing about it, one of the things is the mental mapping, being boots on the ground and going around, lets you not waste RAM in your, like, to borrow a computer analogy, in your brain, because you just know where stuff is. You can take the back road to to your house, so you can avoid this thing. But that takes time to figure out. But when you're walking and you're biking, they did studies with kids where the kids that walked and biked versus just sitting in the backseat of the car knew and could draw from memory their neighborhood way better.
Ooh, that's
which
cool.
helped them feel
really
like they actually were in the community and felt like this is my area that I'm a part of.
My dad thought it was the same to watch Chicago go by out the window instead of just stop the car and let me see the Sears building. Same thing.
Yeah, just drive by. It's fine.
Yeah, it's fine. I was there.
So now cities realize that, and they're like, oh, we'll put a pedestrian mall in, we'll put shops in, but it's a cultural thing as well. It said 89% of pedestrian malls will fail because there's no feet on the street to begin with. You can't just put it in. They're just going to asphyxiate from the fact of there wasn't foot traffic here before.
Yeah, no.
You can't just drop it in and say, all right, now there's going to be a bunch of people walking here.
You could marginally increase the number, but you have to have a number to start with. If there was a decent amount, you would get a little bit more because it was already a highly trafficked area. You can't just plop it in the middle of nowhere and be like, and now here they will come. It's not angels in the outfield,
Or what is that? Field of
Or
Dreams.
Field of Dreams. Field of Dreams, sorry. Field of Dreams.
It's neither, really.
It's not, and you know, it's neither. It's neither, it's neither.
So then we bring up the good question, which I followed to next, is, well, how do you get people in there? If people are not walking, there's a guy in Raleigh who, Renegade, came up with these things where you put these signs on he helps you with the system. You can go to the website and I'll put a link in the show notes about it, but you put up these signs with zip ties on telephone poles and whatnot, but it gives people because he found that's like, oh, there's this really cool cemetery. Oh, there's a science museum. Oh, well, if you just took the train and started here, it would be 10 minutes from here to the city hall where they have a free tour of, on the roof or whatever. But people are like, well, people that are especially not used to it, if you said it's 0.8 of a mile, people are like, oh God, I'm not going to walk that, but if you said, it's just 10 minutes, most people will walk 10 minutes.
Yeah.
So he came up with this thing in Raleigh where he put up these signs. They're made of cardboard or whatever, but you can print them out and he'll ship them to you, and you can put them up on the things, and it'll mark if you put a beginning and the end, and he'll give it to you and tell you which the arrows directions are going, and you can put them up.
Oh.
And so that it's not going to help more people come in, but it gives people things to do, or they'll see the sign and they're like, oh, it's only 10 minutes over to here. And it tended to help, apparently, in his area of Raleigh, where people were walking around because
Imagine that if you just tell people where things are and that they exist, maybe people will go.
And give them the minutes as opposed to something they don't understand.
Yes.
To walk to. So she said, well, maybe I'll do this in Blacksburg. So she said, this is her first experiment. $125 investment. She went on the website, got the signs, put them up. Felt really sketchy because technically it's illegal to just put stuff up without.
And she just moved here.
Yeah.
You do run the risk of looking like a crazy person.
Right.
You just moved to this town. You have all these great things. None of you know. Don't you know?
Yeah.
You're just putting up signs.
Well, she only did it to 3 locations, to the cemetery, to this farmer's market, and some other thing. But
I hope it's part of a ritual. And I hope she's been drawn into a black magic scheme. Sorry.
Well, we'll get into the cemetery in a second.
Oh, good.
So what I like about this book a lot is that she does these things, and then it's not some rah-rah grandstanding, hey, everybody should do this, because she's like, it was neat, but I didn't really see the benefits of it. Like, I felt like I did something good, but it didn't necessarily make me more place attached to the place. Like, I didn't feel like I had a sense of ownership. It was a small, first step in the scheme of things in this 3 to 5 years of what can I do to feel more like I belong here. And then she had this realization where she was like, I put up these things, but then I personally have never been to the cemetery.
Right.
And so she was
That's
like,
what I was just thinking. I was like,
yeah.
But have you done any of this stuff?
And so then she was like, well, how the hell am I going to expect people to walk if I haven't even done it? So then she walks to the cemetery, follows her own signs, and has a nice time and looks at it and is like, oh, this is actually pretty interesting. And that was more of the takeaway for her of like, let me actually do the thing and feel involved instead of getting other people to do stuff. Why don't I just go?
And I feel like the act of putting up the signs is a longer term payoff thing anyway. It would take a while for people to realize they're there and then to actually see the difference, being like, oh, maybe people actually are going to the cemetery more.
Yeah. And the whole point of the walking, she said on the walk to the cemetery, she saw this cool side alley that had a church in the background.
There you go. See?
So that was the whole point of just the walking to the cemetery.
Yeah.
Got her more connected to that area. So then the checklist for you yourself, what you can do if this interests you about lacing up your sneakers, sliding on your sandals, walking around your neighborhood, some actionable takeaways. Figure out the mile radius around your home and try to replace 1 trip per week that you do to something within there. So if you go to the barber that's 6 miles away that you drive, try to find a barber a mile within your home and go there. If you usually get groceries from somewhere miles away, try to use a local grocer or just a
Yeah. That'd be very cool. I mean, I certainly know that I could replace several trips with something, probably just right down the street or such. And that if I were to actually do that and start that today of just taking 1 trip a week down the street.
Yeah.
I would absolutely
feel more attached.
And I would learn so much about all I would immediately start looking at all the houses on this street, and I would start looking at all the alleyways, and I'd look at the cars that were lining the street, and I would start thinking about which cars are actually living here and which cars actually are just visiting for the day. And then if I did that again the next week, I would be thinking about all those same things, and you add all that information to it, and you get...
Yeah. And for somebody else who thinks, you live in an 80 walkable score, somebody looks on walkscore.com
55.
And it's 55 or
42.
whatever. So what do you do? So she's saying something like what the kids did, like just take a piece of paper and try and make a map for yourself of where you live and what you like to do and interesting places, and fill that in over time as you go about, and be like, or put like the mental memory areas of like, oh, well, that's where I kissed my girlfriend, or this is where... I saw that weird guy that was throwing tennis balls at the wall. Or just like
that's
nonsense.
Where we got gas before we went to the lake.
Yeah, stuff like that will help you feel like this is a place that I know.
That's the thing I'm thinking about the most right now is like, oh yeah, I could just walk up the street to a gas station and get a couple of little groceries that I buy all the time down the street at Kroger or Ralph's. I'm like, no, I could replace that with, walking right outside my door, basically. It might be a little more expensive or something, but the trade-off there is feeling more at home and connected in my community.
So we're moving straight on to number 2, buying local.
Here we go.
There was a study that was done in Salt Lake City, and in this study, they were telling people, if you spend $25 at a local store, meaning owned by somebody that lives in the community and procures goods from the community, $25, $14 of that would stay in the community, meaning the person that they hired would get that money from the salary, or the product that they sold, they would get to keep a lot of that return, or the bill that they're paying goes to the electric company in town, or the accountant that they use works down the street. And so 14 of the $25 is there. If you bought that at a chain, $3.50 of the $25 would stay in the community.
Oh, that's fascinating. That reminds me of Killer Mike, the rap artist, had a Netflix show come out very recently where it's kind of a reality show, so he takes up kind of a different angle every time, and he's trying to, he's just trying these kind of like social experiments. But the first one is kind of like that, but he was focusing on spending money in the Black community, but very much just the same way of how it's affected right outside your door and how that money is passed around to the people around you or not. So the first episode of his show was trying to spend, I think it was a week of only spending money in the Black community, because when he pulled up the numbers, when $1 is spent in the Black community, it stays in the Black community for something like only a few hours, which is amazing, because every other demographic would keep that dollar for at least a few days before it would go out. So it was fascinating to see him actually try to tactilely do that. I cannot spend this dollar at this business. I have to spend it at this one.
Yeah.
It was really fascinating. It was really cool. I mean, that's specifically about the Black community, but you could take that for any demographic you want to. I mean, that was just really eye-opening.
Yeah. So she is now realizing, okay, well, if I want to be involved in this, I want to get a place attached, I should buy from a local person. So there's a thing that might be going on in your neighborhood called a cash mob, kind of like a flash mob. But you could see if this is organized, where people just go to one local business and everybody has to spend at least $20 there.
Oh,
and so
that's neat.
So then everybody goes in there and it infuses that business with a bunch of business for that time, and it just shows people, hey, you can support. And so the thing is, though, it's an undisclosed store, so you sign up for it, and then it's like, oh, well, you might have to go spend $20 at the florist. But it's not about the fact that you're buying flowers or that you need flowers or that you have any of that stuff.
It's about supporting the community and getting to know it.
And putting money in there and
a living, breathing part of it.
So she says, oh, cool, I'm going to sign up for this. So she goes,
that's cool.
And then they're like, okay, we're going to this skateboard store. And she's like, oh, Lord. Like, I don't...
Yeah,
and all the old
get
people
some helmets, go and get some knee pads.
Everybody's grumbling.
Safe.
Yeah, they're like, I don't want anything from here, But then the organizer...
We're going to the air filter store, everyone. Get your 20s.
So the organizer is like, no, they have like sunglasses and hats and that kind of thing. And so everybody buys their thing, and she's the last person to find something because she's like, I don't want any of this stuff. So she finds a Virginia Tech shirt that's there. That it's like a little bit under $20, but she's like, I can't,
Yeah.
Again, the letter of the law of these experiments and not the actual whole thing. But the big takeaway for her was when she got the shirt, and then this guy's like, hey, I'm Daniel, and thanks her so much for buying it. And she's like, oh, I recognize that, like, this is Daniel. This is his store. This is his paycheck. Is this $20 for this shirt? It's not about the skateboard store. Like, now I know Daniel, and now I know that he runs the skateboard shop.
Yeah.
And I hope that he does well, even
And
though I
doesn't
never
that change
skateboard.
your interaction there henceforth anytime you see him?
Yeah. And it's not necessarily even at that point about the economics of the whole thing.
Exactly.
It's
and
the
that is
tangible.
what maybe can make you feel more home.
Yeah. Hey, this is Daniel, and I'm happy to like help him out. Then for her whole thing, she realized, well, I want to do that. So she made it a thing where she's spending a total of $50 a month at a local business, and she chose the toy store because that's a novelty place, and she can get fun gifts for people, or she can find a way to do that, and she knows the people there, and they're really
Toy stores
hustling
are
it
in
out.
danger too. Toy and bookstores are left and right falling out of public view.
Yeah. So some of the actionable items on the checklist that you could do, find one item that you can buy and stick with that. So like if you always buy whatever, pick a local place that you can always get something from that you get on repeat, and always just buy it there and stick with that. Realize that it's not necessarily about the price, it's about friendliness and giving back and building on those tenets, because it is going to be a sacrifice to spend an extra $4, but think of the outcome beyond, oh, well, I saved $4.
Yeah. They have so many old businesses over here, like Old Magnolia is mom and pop shops all up and down. So I could imagine maybe that there's some sort of program like that. Because there's some stores I'm like, how? Like I love it, but like, how do you stay open?
Yeah.
How are you still here? You're an automotive bookstore.
Yeah.
Who goes in there?
Yeah. Well, to go in there and get to know them.
I know. Now I've got to go and buy a book on how to fix an Acura, and I'm gonna meet Dave, who runs the auto bookstore. And
Which is we're moving right on to number 3. Say hi to your neighbors. It's tough to make friends, especially if you're 35, 36, and moving to Blacksburg.
Yeah.
In the 1950s, 44% of neighbors socialized at least once a week. By 1970, that went down to 24%.
Oh my gosh.
There's a book, which I have not read, which she references, called The Vanishing Neighbor, which if you're into that concept is a very interesting thing.
Now that immediately, because nostalgia is such a big thing, harkening back to, classic Americana, all of those types of things, but that is like an aspect that nobody seems to be talking about that's missing from all of this, is the actual neighborly door-to-door community, going over to the neighbor's house down the street with all the kids. Like, it's not like that seems heavily missing.
And because of the 11 moves in your lifetime,
right?
You're renting, you're transient.
Absolutely.
She was saying it's tough in Blacksburg because Blacksburg is a college town. It's a lot of people leave for the summer, or it's young people who are there to go to school and then move.
Yeah.
And so that is a whole thing. So you kind of also now, like you said, it's not being talked about. You almost have to. It's weirder now to bring a casserole to your neighbor,
right? And I'm like, why? Because like that aspect is something that just feels so central and missing from the things that we are doing now.
Yeah,
I don't know. It's
so
very interesting.
Yeah, our good friend Jimmy Carter, the president of the United States, came up with Good Neighbor Day, which is September 28th. So she had lived there for a year, and then she's deciding to do this experiment. She's like, well, this is a good excuse for people to accept me as a good neighbor, because you can do something and say, hey, it's Good Neighbor Day, an arbitrary thing to do. So she decides, I'm going to make some banana bread, and I'm going to give it out to my neighbors and the people around, and her kids are going to tag along and see it and all, and maybe it'll be awkward, and maybe people won't like it, or they'll be confused or whatever.
And we'll go caroling in September.
And it's Good Neighbor Day, and here's some banana bread. But she has a wonderful experience with it. She highly recommends doing this, because she said, we got the mail and we chit-chatted, but there was this guy, he's the dude with the dreadlocks, because he said his name 9 months ago, but I never,
Right,
and now it's
right, right,
awkward.
right.
But now here's a reason. And suddenly the dude with the dreadlocks becomes Jeff.
Mm.
And he's super awesome and he knows about, real hip to what's going on in the town and chat. And you form that connection.
Yeah.
And he loves banana bread.
And
he
I'm
was
so
just
interested in what keeps us from these connections. And this is kind of get far away from the point, but I am always so interested in like, well, isn't it so nice to reveal who Jeff was,
Yeah.
And but at the same time, I know I have anxiety over that exact thing, that I wouldn't introduce myself to Jeff and I wouldn't go talk to him, even though I know that outcome of knowing Jeff and learning about him would be a great thing for me. It
And
would be
Jeff
a great
loves
point
it
of
too.
resolve. Exactly. It would be a great thing. Where does it come in my head that, I'm scared? Well, how does that happen? I don't know. I'm very interested in this because I feel like so many people I know are going through that. And
They either
I'm very
want to take
interested
the
in this
leap or they
anxiety.
want somebody else to take the leap. But somebody has to take the leap and be
Right.
like, I'm going to
Right.
be the awkward one. Yeah.
Exactly.
So some of the things that she recommends doing on the neighbor day, or just lie and say, you could just say, oh, we're doing Good Neighbor Day for the neighborhood. It doesn't have to actually be September 28th. Definitely be the person, cut them off at the pass, welcome anyone you see who moves in that's new. Be that person immediately.
And okay, that's one thing I want to talk about, the difference between the two places I've lived now in this month and a half span. The clientele of my new place, the demographic is totally different. So we were in a younger area, I guess is how I need to say it. I guess millennials in a bar area, and then we moved over to this quiet Burbank by a park, and so the people in our complex are more middle-aged. They have children, multiple children even, and we even see that families know each other within the complex. Their children are going over and playing with each other. Like, they all go out to the movies, or like these parents and kids are going out to the movies, so the other kids are going to go with them, and then they're going to come back, and all the kids are going to fan out to all the different places. It's very, very different just meeting people in the hallway. It's very different meeting people in the elevator. And number one, the thing that I have noticed is everyone here is a bit more apt to go, hello, how are you? Look you in the eyes, ask you a question. When at the other place, that was not the case at all. Everything was a standoff. Nobody would look at you. Everything was awkward. Everything was just like panic. And here, there's none of that. And the biggest difference I see are the age demographic. So I don't know what that means, but it's something that I've noticed. Or maybe it's something that happens to you when you get kids, or maybe it's just something that happens to you as you get older. Maybe there is a difference in these generations. I don't know.
Or they're hitting the 3 to 5 year term where you're like, oh, now I feel more place attached, and so I feel the desire to reach out and comfort in doing that. That's interesting.
That's been a palpable difference right off the bat. That has got me thinking in this month about, exactly, well, why? And why do I feel this way? And will I be more like this as these people are here? Will that happen to me? Why? What are the reasons? That's an interesting place my mind has been, but this is really touching on it.
You were talking about people going out to the movies and going with their kids and whatnot. The next section is about doing something fun and what your town has to offer. The thing that she was wondering, also you think about, okay, well, we're going to do something fun. If a friend was coming to visit, what would you want to show them? And the irony of it is she was saying it's inverse to community size, the place attachment in regards to this, because like when she was in Austin, when her friends would come over, she'd be like, oh, we'll go over here, we'll go do this thing, we'll go do that. And she was like, we would never do that. That was just the tourist attraction that people, but like when you're in a smaller town, it's like, oh, actually, this is Lefty's Diner that we always go to.
Yeah.
But she was saying, especially if you're moving to a new place, like in order to feel place attached, you should try and figure out what your community is good at or what people are excited about. And so for Blacksburg, it's Virginia Tech, it's the football games. The stadium can fit more than the population of the town. It's a whole big thing. She doesn't care about football or sports at all. But that's what her community is involved in, and they're interested in, and they support, and they rally, and they, Enter Sandman is the song that they sing when the team runs in, and there's the chant, the call and response for the Hokies and all of that stuff. And so her experiment was, she was saying she went to the stadium, looked up all the stuff, went through the memorials of the different things in the teams, and she tried to figure out why this trophy was important and why that football was important. And then she started wearing the t-shirt that she got from the skateboard place. And she was saying when she saw the video of the graduates graduating that year, she started crying at the song Enter Sandman when they're throwing up their hats in the air, and she's like, "What is hat? Why am I? Why is this silly song making me emotional?" Yeah. But that's part of it, is finding what your town does well and saying, if I was a Blacksburgian, I would be supporting this team, even if I don't necessarily care about football. This is what this community is about.
See, and I struggle with that in a big city like LA, because then to get the same thing that she's talking about is a little less boots on the ground here, because you can go to Dodgers or USC or UCLA or.
Well, that's just sports.
Well, no, I mean, but I'm saying things that the whole city, like Burbank, maybe they're all about their high school football team, but I don't know that yet. But trying to find what everybody in Burbank is about, I don't know.
Yeah,
but what everybody about in LA County is about, well, maybe the Dodgers, but that instantly gets a bit more disconnected than like what you're talking about in Blacksburg, Virginia.
Well, that's what she was saying. It's inverse to the community size in things like this. So some of the checklist things that you can do, think about what 10 things you would show off to people, or if you don't have 10 things, find them, because that's a part of your community, and that's what makes you invested in the area. And then the last thing, go to stuff. If this is a thing that the people of your town do, go to it.
Yeah.
Because you're part of that town.
Yeah.
The next thing, which is hard to do, again, kind of depending on the thing, but commune with nature. 85% of the population of the world will be in cities by 2050.
Wow. Well, I also read an article yesterday that said that humanity might be over by 2050, so we'll have to agree to disagree.
We'll see what happens. Right now,
all I know is that means 2049 comes to pass.
But 2050, it's all also according to 2050. Ready Player One is going to happen.
See, yes, and so I think we're determining now that humanity doesn't really go past 2051.
Yeah. Right now, 1 out of 8 humans lives in a mega city of over 10 million people. So like Tokyo, Mumbai, giant cities. That's 1/8 of the world lives in a giant city, which we do.
We do.
There's something called biophilia, which is where humans are naturally drawn to nature and derive something from it. There was a study done in 2001 of 98 apartment buildings in the roughest areas of Chicago, and there was 52% less crime in areas that had more vegetation around it.
That's fascinating.
Yeah.
Wow. I'm just going to cover my apartment in trees. No violence here!
No pain, no suffering.
No pain, no hurt.
She's saying, are preferences for landscapes changeable? Because she moved to Blacksburg, and she's like, I grew up in California. This forest is kind of claustrophobic. The giant green trees and the kudzu wrapping around, and it's so green. And I'm not used to this environment. There was a study that was done in Sweden, and 3/4 of the people settled in a similar landscape to their childhood. And that tends to be a trend.
Yeah.
So, her challenge, there's a thing called the Scenic 7, where it's these hiking trails and things that you have to go on in central Virginia where she's living. And she said she wanted to do that summer or that year, complete all 7 of them. So she didn't do the biking one. Things just got bogged down, but she did them, and it made her more familiar with the area. She saw a photo of her hometown in like a Pinterest board of nature photos, and this was the revelatory moment. She was like, oh, I like that. There's pictures of the mountains and pictures of the beaches and pictures, and it's like, that looked beautiful. And then she looked at the caption, and it said Blacksburg, Virginia. It's like, oh, I am now more appreciative of this area because I took the time. But she had to do it again through an arbitrary means of like, this is a challenge, complete all 7 and then you get a t-shirt, So some of the things that you can do about communing with nature, even if you're 1/8 of the population in the world and live in a giant city, learn the names of the flora and fauna in your area. I don't know what random brown bird that is, but if I knew more about
Yeah.
what was going on, I think I would care about the plants and the animals.
Right.
If I took the time to learn about them.
Yeah. Yeah, what is that stupid brown bird?
So many brown birds here. Create a happy place anchor, like you said, associating these hikes with her kids, and they got lost in one and accidentally went through a cow pasture, and then it started raining. Now that is a happy memory of that place. The next thing she has, number 6, volunteer. So her friend did a birthday project where she, instead of getting presents, gave presents, and Melody's birthday is the 17th of July. So for her, she wanted to do 17 random acts of kindness.
Okay.
Some of them were anonymous. Some they ding dong ditched, whatever. And then so you don't know. She did this with her kids because she knows that
it's gonna be so nice.
Well, this is kind of a non-starter. People know that volunteering is a good way to be attached to your community. So she left a cooler of water bottles on a trail, and she realized that it helps create a sense of we. It's like Saturday chores. Like when you do Saturday chores in your house, you're like, okay, well, this is for a reason. It's like doing that, but in the community. And if you think of it like that, if it's hard for you to wrap your head around, because only a quarter of the U.S. volunteers ever.
Oh,
3/4 of the U.S. has not volunteered at all.
Oh, really?
It's so low.
Wow.
That's crazy.
That is. That's shockingly low.
She didn't necessarily want to start big on, I'm going to go to the homeless shelter every single night. So a question for some people is like, hey, I don't have time, the classic excuses, whatever. Writing a check for a local business or for something that is a part of your community is, for some people, depending on what you're doing and your financial situation, might be just as important as volunteering because you're investing. You care about this thing's future success. So there was a local theater called the Lyric that's a non-profit, like artsy theater or whatnot, shows rare movies and that kind of thing. And she liked it. And she liked going there, even though she didn't really know anybody. And she felt awkward because everybody else that's in the lobby is talking and they're old friends. And she's like, when will I be like this? So she donated money to it. They were having a campaign because they needed to update their projectors or whatever. And she said that made her feel like she was a part of the thing. And she tried to do a volunteer thing. This is, again, why I like this book. Because she was a part of the parent-teacher organization, but that was too insular. It's like, well, that's like already something that you're involved in. Right. So get outside of that. There was a thing where, like, they pack lunches for the kids on the weekend that don't have enough money. They have free lunches for school. And she was like, there was way too many volunteers. I dropped granola bars in the bags, but I didn't feel like I was doing anything. And I felt like I was like, contributing less because there was so many people here. Like, they don't need me to be involved in this. So what she found was, and she was like, you might judge me for this because it's not helping homeless people or giving kids food, but the Lyric they run on volunteers. It's a nonprofit thing. So she volunteered to scoop popcorn and take tickets and be involved in that. And she met this lady named Betty that became her friend. And then the Lyric was a part of the town parade. So they had their own float, and she joined on that. And they were doing it as a promo for their thing where they was doing a series of videos of like cats and cat memes and stuff. So they all dressed up in cat costumes. And she was like, even though that wasn't a thing that I was comfortable with, I was like, what would a Blacksburgian do? Like, well,
dress like a cat.
Yeah, dress like a cat and join the parade.
Yep. Dress like a cat and join the parade. Now that's all that we really have to say
about it all.
That's what it really boils down to.
So the checklist for volunteering is either A, see what breaks your heart in the community and try and find a way to contribute to fixing it, or like what she did, B, see what gives you joy and find a way to enhance it. The other thing you can do is the random acts of kindness. And then the last thing was donate. Like you said, just if you can't or don't want to do any of that, giving money to a local thing will help you invest mentally in the place. Number 7, eat local food. Just as a stat for no reason whatsoever. Portland, Maine has the most restaurants per capita.
Oh, really?
More than San Francisco. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
They're huge into food. And this is a big part of community is what you're eating in a lot of places. You're like, oh, Louisiana, I know. Gumbo, po' boys.
Exactly.
Maryland, crab cakes.
Exactly,
yeah. It's a part of it. And so she's like, what is Virginian? Could food make me feel like a Virginian?
Yeah, what's the what's the Blackburgian diet consist of? What's the quintessential?
What are people into? So the low barrier to entry for most people for this is the farmer's market. And another reason it's big, which I didn't really think about until she brought it up, at the grocery store, you get all your food and then you put it in and then you go in the checkout line and you leave.
Yeah.
In a farmer's market, every single thing you buy has its own checkout line. So when you buy strawberries from this guy, you have to have the social interaction with the farmer that made it and chat with him and buy it. And then if you want to get avocados, you have to go to the other guy.
Totally different transaction.
And so you're having 15 different social interactions with the people that made the food. Their idea, which was her experiment, she was like, and this is funny because I've thought of this all the time, is like, I want to become a regular at a restaurant.
Oh, yeah.
Like, that seems very...
Yeah.
She's like, how can we fabricate
Emily says
this?
that too, yeah.
Because I want to be a regular at a restaurant
yeah.
in Blacksburg. And her husband's like, cool, let's do it. So the thing is that, like, he's at a teacher's salary. She's a freelance writer. She's like, well, we can't... the ideal is to come in here every night.
Right.
But we have to do it once a week because we can't afford...
Right.
being
you have
at a
to
restaurant.
decide the night, or I suppose and it's going to be Friday nights, you know.
So they go to
My
left.
family
Yeah,
did that. My dad did that for a long time. They would, I guess, that's probably one of the better neighborly things that I had growing up. Is my dad for quite a long time Friday nights would go to dinner with his neighbors, our neighbors at the time, and that we kept that up for like the better part of a decade. I think it was pretty cool, and so. I would always be, my parents are divorced, so I would always be picked up on Friday nights. And so that if I knew I was going to my dad's, I knew there was at least we're going out to eat with the neighbors. You know, I get to talk to them or talk to their daughter or whatever's going on. That was, I think, a pretty big thing to look forward to as a kid, just being able to go out, meet the neighbors
and the
on a weekly
stability of
basis.
that, knowing that it's coming. So she goes to Lefty's, and they try to make it a, weekly thing. She realizes, though, Blacksburg is such a college town, there's such a transient employment and staff. It's like you can't have Deborah, the usual waitress, give you the usual thing because it's all college students. And because they're going once a week, it's a different kid. And they don't even, she's like, I'm trying to order the same thing 5 weeks in a row and I'm sick of it, but nobody's remembering that I order the thing.
Right.
And in this restaurant that they picked, it's sort of arbitrary because it's usually like you go to a place and then you like it and then you continue to order. They kind of did it backwards and like picked a place and they're like, we're going to have to like this because we picked this place.
And keep ordering the same thing
all the time.
We don't like it.
She tried.
I need to be known.
Yeah. She tried, like, a suggestion from her friend was like, well, if you leave a big tip, then they'll remember you. They didn't remember them. The place is like,
we left $1,000. They didn't even look at us.
Yeah. If you like always want to sit in the same place, it's like, oh yeah, that's your spot. But this restaurant, you have to seat yourself. So like nobody remembers that they always sit there.
Right.
Because it's not novel. They try sitting at the bar. Like that's what a regular would do. That doesn't work. So she thought the experiment was a failure. And she realized over time as they were doing this, the thing about what they call a third place, which is not home and which is not work, is not so much about being recognized as the recognizing of the place. It's like, oh, I know Lefty's, I know the menu, I know the thing, I know the people.
Oh, yeah.
It's more in yourself. So they were doing it the wrong way, and that was a revelation to me of like, if you do want to have a thing, it's not so much about being the person that's recognized
There's an
as
order
you.
of operations, and it certainly has a palpable difference.
Yeah. So some checklist things for eating local food is have a dinner front lawn block party where if you have a lawn or that she lives in a suburban area, but just whatever anybody's going to eat for dinner anyways, make it a Friday night thing, like you said with your dad having the Friday stuff. Make it a Friday night thing or whatever night thing. Like everybody, like our front lawn is open. We've got 3 picnic tables and whatever. Just bring your own thing and we'll sit out here and eat. And whoever can make it can make
From
it.
7 to 10, we are on the lawn.
Look up hidden gems on Google for your town.
I
think about, because I talked off mic about the kind of fake it till you make it, but it's definitely what she's utilizing to beat the system and heighten the experiences and saying like, oh, if I was a community member of Burbank, I would go to this thing and talk to my friends who are a part of this community.
But it kind of it goes back to another thing we were talking about off mic, is just kind of your passion and drive to do whatever that is, and you can derive meaning and comfort and a place of you can derive your home from those things. If you choose to figure out where you're putting value. We put value in tons of things without even realizing them. It comes down to, are you able to reallocate your value system? Be like, no, I do care about this.
Yeah. Something else that a lot of people care about, number 8, get more political.
Mm.
She joined, and I'm going to have to look this up because this is very interesting, what she calls the Citizens Institute, which maybe it's named different things in other towns, but it was a 9-week thing on Mondays where you learned about the different government organizations of your town. And so, like, she said it was great because she got to ride in a fire truck on a fire truck day, and she got to speak to the people that were in City Hall, and she got to speak to the people that were doing the nonprofit stuff, and all the different parts of how the government works. You get to meet the mayor, you get to do all these things.
Yeah.
She said it was probably the best part of all the experiments that she did because it really made her like the people of her town the most. This was the most involved that she felt in getting to do something there. Because you got to see how the medicine's made, how it all works. Oh, this is actually a person, and this is their job, and they want you to email them when something is wrong or when something is right. So going into voting between 2008 and 2012, the highest turnout for any mayoral, meaning the mayor election, was 45% of the population.
Really?
Yeah, which is madness.
Yeah.
They asked her to do a survey about the city's website at the end of the class. She was like, I would never have done this. I don't care at all about that. But she was saying because she took this class and because she got to know people and saw how it all works, it was like, oh no, I'm doing this for the guy who's the IT guy for the town hall. And that's why this is important, because they care. And she got a better sense of how you could interact with your local government. So some of this stuff for the checklist in being involved more politically. How do you just do the smallest things to get started feeling more place attached to your thing? So what she's saying is follow the mayor on social media.
Follow the mayor around town.
Step 2, assume the mayor's identity. Now join one of these Citizens Academy things.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Follow the local news. Chat with them.
Yeah.
They're always like, tweet us at whatever about how you think about this.
Please watch us. Please, God, watch us.
Do it. And then that's the big thing. If there's something you hate or you love, let them know.
Yeah.
Be involved. That's why it's there. They want to know. And then speaking of doing things, so number 9, a big part of being place attached, creating something. Someone said somewhere in your town, I'll do it. Like the parade where she's part of the cat thing. Someone came up with the town parade.
Dress like a cat and join the parade.
Yeah. But there was a person 17 years before.
I want to have cats in the parade.
Who said, I want the parade at all. Somebody.
I want the parade.
Yeah. In the big town sense of things. So everybody had a time where they had to say, oh, nobody's doing this. I want to do it. So going off of that, her daughter was sitting on the floor one day. She was typing on the computer, and her daughter's like, remember when we did that chalk thing when they were in Austin? It was like a big chalk art extravaganza on the sidewalk. And she was like, we should do something like that here. And so she's like, oh, I'm doing these experiments.
We should.
well, she's like, normally every whim of your child that says like, oh, we should do this, you're just like, yeah. But she's like, well, now that I'm in this zone, I'm going to humor it and say, let's do it. So they're going to do the first annual Blacksburg Chalk Walk.
Hey.
Here we go.
Look at that.
So she says, let's do it. And it's a way to show her child.
It has a nice ring to it even.
Yeah. I'm going to show my child that I'm practicing what I'm preaching. And she
that's
can...
possible. You can do and you can get what you want.
Oh, you had this whim? You want to do a chalk walk? Let's figure out how to make it happen.
You liked that? You can do it. You can make it happen. It can be yours.
Yeah. And because of the parade and her volunteering at the Lyric, she was able to speak with people. And there's something called Art in the Market that happens during the summer. And so she's like, well, we're going to start small. We're not going to have our own big thing, but we can piggyback off of them. They're doing this big arts thing. Maybe we just have a separate booth and we have artists that are there. And it's interesting because it was immediately, they ramped it up to 1,000. And they're like, no, we'll have local artists who are doing things and we'll have a competition and there'll be prizes and we can get these people and we can borrow the tables for this and we can borrow the booth. And so it was funny because she's in charge of this, but they came up with all of these other additional things. So as the date approaches in the next meeting, she got scared and she scaled it back because she was like, this is like too much.
No.
Yeah. So she's like, well, why don't, if we just have a booth and we just have like some buckets and chalk, and in the art in the market, kids can come up and they can just draw chalk, and we have this area of the festival and whatnot, and they can draw. And nobody was opposed. They're like, no, that sounds fine too. Yeah. Kind of sad, but she recognized that she was like, this is too much for me. I'm too scared. No. Let's like, we're just drawing chalk.
Oh my God.
So then the art in the market happens. Pouring rain that day. Nobody's walking around. Her and her daughter Ella are sitting there. They're trying to get little 3-year-olds like, you want to draw? The rain subsides a little bit at the end of the thing. The kids start picking up the chalk and they're drawing it around. And so it's definitely a toned down version of her experiment of what she thought was possible. But at the same time, she saw her daughter there. They were doing stuff together. They're out in the community. They got
I'm just happy it got done at all. I was worried it was just totally rained out.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, next year.
So some checklists for creating things. Show up to art activities in your community. If you're not into art, she says, write a love letter to your town. Like, think about the things that you like and place it somewhere for somebody to find, kind of in like an anonymous thing. Because maybe somebody else, like, she didn't realize all this stuff was going on until she did it. And so maybe you can do that for somebody if that's your thing, if you want to be niche in that way. Write the things you like about your town.
Write a love letter to your favorite ramen restaurant and just leave it on their front doorstep and tell them how much it meant to have a place you felt like you could go and be home.
Yeah.
Or whatever.
And that's your artistic, that's your creation to the town, to somebody in the town that it matters to. Tour public art, there's murals, there's all kinds of stuff that somebody that has said, I want to make that happen and put it somewhere out in the world.
We just found a library up the street. We need to go over there and look at that.
Yeah, and get books.
Oh, yeah.
The last thing, number 10, stay loyal through the hard times. So I read this book more recently, and it came out in 2016, but she was saying, so in 2007, on April 16th, that's when the Virginia Tech shooting happened. And she moved to Virginia, or to Blacksburg after that. As of when that happened, that was the deadliest shooting in U.S. history. Yeah. And that was huge, and that devastated that community.
I remember that specifically because there was Columbine, and then there was this, and there's the 7 years between that. This kind of tragedy was not happening and was not politicized or publicized. And is not anything like it is today. And so I still have the newspapers for this of saying that exact headline, deadliest shooting in American history.
And so you look at it and like bringing all the way back to Gertie in West Virginia with the flood, and there's a sense of community around that thing, and she's just moving into this. And, she'd be at something and they'd be talking about, oh yeah, the security from April 16th. And she's like, what? And then she remembers, she's like, oh yeah, that, like, it's not a part of her identity in the community, but it's so much a part of other people's
it is a scar of that
things.
Community, yeah. I just watched, going off of this, We Are Columbine. It's a brand new documentary made by survivors of the shooting, and it's very much about the community and what it was like to live there before and after the shooting. They don't really talk about the shooting itself, and they never even mention the gunman. And this is all about it. It is the title, We Are Columbine. It is all about the community, what it was like to be a part of it before and after. And so they follow 4 students, and this is 20 years after, 4 students and a teacher very closely, and go through it with them. It was really fascinating to see how much we all rely on each other without even realizing it.
The community is so important in disaster stuff, especially. She talked about a survey or a study, the tsunami that happened in Japan in the 2000s. In a study that was done, the variation in these towns along the coast of amount of population that died ranged from 0 to 10% of the population of each of these towns. And they wondered how that happened. So there was the mention of the earthquake, and then there was 40 minutes before the wave hit. And that was true across the coast. And so they looked at a bunch of different things, physical elements, environmental factors, whether the town is higher or lower, all different sorts of stuff, accessibility of roads. The biggest contributor to that 0 to 10% was social connection. Because if you knew that there was an old person living by the beach, you only have 40 minutes, you're going to go for them. You can't take that 40 minutes to become their neighbor. No. You already have to have that in place.
Same thing happened with the fires here in California. I imagine you could do the exact same study there, because I read about multiple studies about people trying to go around, trying to save people, trying to get caravans together. Some were successful and some were not, but yes, that exactly. And those people were talking about all the people they didn't know even. I remember this specifically they were only helping the people that they could, that they knew, that they because they knew them, they went there, like you said. And if they didn't, they didn't.
Yeah, the thing that they do for a community is they focus your thoughts on what's important. And so she was saying she can't have that for this experience, but what she was trying to do was have an empathy for the history at least. So she spoke with her friend who she met at church, whose husband was the guy who called 911 in that building. And she has like a whole binder of all the articles and the pictures and the information and all of that stuff, and looked through it. And then the other thing she did to try and feel more a sense of the community in regards to this situation of staying loyal through the hard times was there's a memorial race that they do every year, like a 3.2 mile thing for the 32 victims. And then they go out to the stadium and see the memorial and all of that stuff. And she was concerned because she's like, at first it was for the people directly affected by it and stuff. And she was like, it doesn't feel like I'm intruding to now be a part of this thing, but to just go, that's what a Blacksburgian who is involved in that would be a part of. She said she did not go, she felt it too far to like go and join everybody that was looking at the memorial stones and whatever, but just being a part of that thing gave her an understanding and an empathy and made her feel like, oh, this is my community. Right. I'm tied to this as well, the good and the bad. Very much
on my mind watching the Columbine documentary. You would get the sense, because now, even amazingly, some of the kids that they follow a student, that ends up becoming a teacher at Columbine, and again, it's all about how it affected the community, and you start to get the sense that if I was in this community, it would become a part of me too, whether or not I was there.
So she goes into now the checklist for things that you could do in your community in regards to staying loyal through the hard times, creating emergency contact with neighbors, taking that leap and being like, hey, just in case anything happens, here's my thing.
Absolutely.
Setting that up beforehand, because who knows, there might be a time where it's only 40 minutes and you have to, and that will, just even that act creates a sense of connection between.
You hear something's going down at the school, there, you know that the parents are at work, but you know that the school's only two,
if you've done the work ahead of time and exchanged that information and shown an empathy and a caring of like, we're a community together. The other stuff was...
But none of that happens without taking those first steps, without being willing to be that person, being a little strange. But if we could kind of get that out of our mind, maybe it would just be a lot easier, if that's the thing I keep going back to, and it was just like, why is it so in our mind? Why are we so scared of each other? I don't get it. I am too.
Right. Well, then that's it. Everybody is. It's the 1% extra, like, I'm going to go do this thing. Some other stuff. Read about the town's history.
Like you'll find a killer entity that's been haunting the children for decades.
Oh, the whole town is haunted.
Oh, the whole town's haunted by a mystical alien clown. How odd.
Nobody told me about this. The other thing to do is imagine people's hard battles. She said after she learned about all that stuff, it helped her cultivate an empathy for everybody in the town. Because somebody's getting frustrated at the grocery store, and it's like, well, I also didn't deal with what they dealt with 6 years ago when the whole town was in shambles because of this thing happening. And I understand now the grander sense of people in this area.
It puts it very much in the forefront of your mind. You don't know where they have been. Just because something has happened in this town, it's very likely they have a very personal connection to it. So you don't know. So it's way more. I mean, that's the case with everybody. We don't know where anybody's been, but we don't say that literally every time we interact with a human being. But if you're in this situation, it would absolutely be way towards the forefront of your mind, being like, maybe not. Maybe I'll be a little careful.
So now we get to the last section, settle down. Those are the 10 things. She was saying that the pace for her was pretty glacial when it comes to these, because it was just tiny things over the course. And she was still doing this over the 3 years. Now she's been there for 3 years and has gotten through all this stuff, and her kids are going to school and blah, blah, blah. There was a time where she had left and she felt homesick for it. And she was like, well, that's a pretty good indicator.
She left as in...
Like on a trip or something, and as she was doing her research or part of her job, and she was like, I can't wait to get back. Like, that's a big...
that's a huge part of thing,
And another big thing that she was saying that happened was she was visiting Lynchburg, which is another town in Virginia, a bit of a ways away, still in the same area, but it was in the summer, and they have one of those splash pads where the water shoots up and kids run around and jump in it in the town. center area downtown, and she was like, felt a sense of jealousy maybe, or just like, oh man, if only our town had this, like this is so cool. And then you get back in the cycle of like, oh, maybe we should move, or like maybe, you know, the wishing of a different thing, and thinking about also like Austin. And then then what she did was she was like, oh, wait a second. She just messaged the Parks and Recreation that picture, you know, and said, hey, Lynchburg has this. And they were like, oh, cool. Let's talk about like maybe how we can make this happen. That looks awesome. And like, that's all.
Look at that.
Yeah, that's all it needs. It's not
because you knew who to send the picture to.
Yeah. Instead of going into the cycle of, oh man, if only, it's like, no, you're a part of your town. You can do stuff for it too.
Mm-hmm. And it's not, well, let's go here because they have, well, why don't you have something to do with making it happen where you are?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Not waiting for the mayor. Like make it your own.
Don't wait for the mayor. Dress like a cat and join the parade.
Come on now. So now one of her friends that she's made in Blacksburg is moving to Austin. And she's like, oh, we lived in Austin. We know all this stuff. And now she's, again, getting the pangs of like, but I liked all that stuff in Austin, too. Mm-hmm. And here comes to the rub of, is it a binary thing? Like, she felt at home in Austin when she was there. Mm-hmm. She also now feels at home here. But when somebody mentions Austin, she still likes all of that stuff that happened over there. And my grand notion of like, oh, once you find the place, you're going to be there for 100 years, and it's where you plant your roots and you grow. They're having one of their dinners at Lefty's. Her husband is saying, oh, I don't know, like this job is necessarily working out. I'm not saying like move tomorrow, but if things aren't going the way that I expected them to in the next couple years, like this might not be the place for it. And she's like, well, why did I do all of this stuff and really work hard at trying to make this a place for us and our kids and all these things if we're just not going to live in Blacksburg? And she got advice from her friend about it being either or, and how that's not necessarily the case. And the quote that I would like to leave you with is, unpack your life wherever you are. Her friend, even if she got into a hotel, even if she's just traveling, unpack your suitcase. Put it in the drawers. You're living there. You're a part of this. Do all the stuff. What would a Blacksburgian do? Even if you're only there for 5 years. Unpack your stuff.
Yeah.
Be there. Do the thing. Because that's what that place has to offer you. And it allows you to have those moments of awareness of saying, oh, it's beautiful here, as you're going down the trail, as you remember the moment you had with your kid, as you're being involved in the civic. It gave her all of these reasons to be involved and to unpack, even if it's not necessarily. And you can still have, oh, I loved Austin. That was my home at that time. Oh, I love Blacksburg. This is my home. But maybe you're there for 20 years, and then when you're 55, you move, you go somewhere else because your kids are grown up and they're living in Portland and you want to be closer to them.
Right.
You can still do that. And just being eager to see the good in your town and what it can offer. And that was the book. This is Where You Belong.
Well, it's fascinating. I loved it. There's certainly a lot that's been on my mind. And now I've got some new ideas about what to do around town.
I will put a bunch of things in the show notes, and then I'll put a list of the 10 topics that you can think about and how to follow through on them.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Dave. Announcement this week: tell somebody about us. Recommend your favorite episode. Just
get the word
what
out.
We're doing. Try and spread it around. It means the world to us.
All right. See you next week.
Next week. Later.